If you're looking to purchase a horse in 2025, then this video is for you. I'm going to cover every expense I can think of. So from purchasing the horse, all the way to what it costs on a monthly basis to care for a horse, whether you're keeping the horse on your own land or if you're boarding your horse. Starting out, what does it cost to buy a horse in 2025? This number is going to vary drastically, just depending on what you want and what you're looking for. If you're a first-time horse buyer, chances are you're looking for a trusty steed that can help you advance in your riding, but is also safe for your level. A good starting number for this type of horse is in the mid-thousands, so $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. You can probably find an older horse that's safe and experienced, but can also teach you the basics. This horse probably won't be fancy. It'll probably be a grade horse, which means they're not registered, they're not a specific breed. If you're looking for a horse that has a bit more training and a bit more capability, or if you're looking for a specific type of breed of horse, you may have to pay more for that. So I would say a good number for like the average cost of a horse ranges from $5,000 to $20,000. That is a very wide range there. So the best thing to do is to just start searching for the type of breed you want, the type of horse you want with the skill level you need, and gauge how much those horses cost. There's a few different ways you can purchase horses, and I would recommend staying away from options that may appear cheap or free, just because nothing is free, especially in the horse world. Getting your horse from auctions or kill pens or situations like that where it may appear cheaper to pull them out of the situation usually ends up costing more because you have to pay vet bills to rehab the horse. You don't know the specific type of training the horse has or why it's at the auction, so you may have to pay training bills. And that's just a situation I would not recommend for a first-time horse owner because you don't necessarily know what you're getting. The cheapest option I would recommend for first-time horse owners would be adopting a horse from a rescue. Usually adoption fees for horses cost anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s, but the reason I trust these sources more is because they have spent time with the horse, they have taken care of any medical issues the horse has. Usually their best interest is the horse, so they are going to be honest with you and they are going to be honest about whether they think you're a good fit or not. Sometimes it may be hard to find what you're looking for at rescues. One cost I highly recommend horse owners take on when it comes to purchasing a horse is a pre-purchase exam. Pre-purchase exams are usually around $500 just because it's a comprehensive exam on the horse. In these exams, the vet is making sure that the horse is capable of doing what you want it to do. If you're looking to purchase a horse in 2025, you may be wondering whether you need to buy a truck and trailer to transport your horse. Because if you need to buy a truck and trailer, that is a very big expense to take on. The good news is, I will say, I don't think it's necessary that you have a truck and trailer when you own a horse. I owned horses for years without having a truck and trailer. That said, I also had a community of horse people around me and I was at a boarding stable, so it was easy to find rides, or it was easy to find someone to trailer my horse somewhere if I needed that. If you're looking to show, compete, or trail ride regularly, having a trailer is very useful. So if that is your goal, I would recommend putting that on your list, but also knowing you don't necessarily need that right away. If you get a brand new truck, you're gonna be spending $80,000, you know, or you could get a beat up used truck that can get you down to the trailhead and you may be spending like $15,000. With horse trailers, you can buy a small 2-horse trailer that maybe looks rickety, but is otherwise good and is safe enough to go where you want. You can buy a trailer like that for $3,000 to $4,000. Nicer trailers, of course, are going to go up in price, and the bigger the trailer, usually the more expensive it's gonna be. Another thing to factor in when you are purchasing a horse is purchasing all the supplies that the horse needs. You're gonna need halters, lead ropes, buckets, medical supplies, winter blankets, fly masks. So I would budget probably at least $300 to $400 for supplies for your first horse. On top of that, you're also going to need tack for your horse. If you've been taking riding lessons, you've probably been using the tack at the lesson barn. But for your own horse, you're going to need tack specific to your horse and to yourself. Tack prices also vary widely as well. You can get a non-name brand saddle for a few $100, or you can get a name brand saddle probably for $1,000 to $3,000. And if you are one who wants used tack and you're on a budget, once you have your bridle, your saddle pad, your girth, or your cinch, then you may spend $800 to $1,000 on all of that. And if you want the blingy fashion name brand things, by the end of it, you are probably spending about $4,000 to $5,000. The good news is once you buy these particular things, like once you purchase the horse, once you purchase your supplies and tack, those costs can go a long way and it's not something you're going to have to continue to pay on. So those are more so like one-time costs. That said, with a truck and trailer, you are also going to have insurance and fuel and all of those things. Insurance is going to be a monthly expense, and I would say I probably pay about $150 a month for my insurance, and that covers both my truck and my trailer. My truck is newer, so that's why it's more expensive, and my trailer is older, and so it's a bit cheaper. If you had a nicer trailer, it may be a bit more. Now onto the recurring costs. First, let's cover where your horse is going to live. You really have two options. You have a boarding stable or you have your own property. A lot of people think having your horse on your own property is going to be cheaper. As someone who has now owned my own land and had my horses on my property, I can attest that is not true. I would say they about balance each other out. So I will cover the costs now of your horse's living situation and what you can expect. Starting out on your own property, there are a lot of things to consider. So first of all, you need fencing, and you also need to maintain fencing. Horses can be hard on fencing, and trees can be hard on fencing. We constantly had broken boards we had to replace. If you have a 4-board fence, a wooden board costs about $8 or $9, and so you can add that up. Another thing you will have to expect to put money towards is field management. Horses are very hard on land and ground, and so you're going to have to put effort into maintaining your pastures. Every spring and fall we would reseed our pastures, and we had a few acres, so we would end up spending about $200 on seed for that. And every year or so you may want to treat your pastures, and that really just depends on where you are, what the ground may need. In our specific area where we lived, the ground would need limestone, and so you would spread limestone over the property, and you'd get a bag of limestone for like 50 bucks. You have to manage manure because manure can kill grass and it can cause the pH in the soil to become unbalanced. And so you're going to want something, either a drag or a manure spreader, but then on top of that you're going to need something to pull the drag or the manure spreader. And so the prices accumulate pretty quickly. So we had a riding lawnmower that we spent $2,000 on. Luckily that was a one-time cost, but then we had a manure spreader that we would use to spread our manure. So shout out to Conestoga Manure Spreaders. Link is in the description for you to go check them out. They have great manure spreaders that are hardy, and you buy once and it will last a lifetime. And so the manure spreaders, they have range in price just depending on what you're looking for. If you have your horses on your own property, you are going to need water heaters in your water tubs. Luckily, this is more of a one-time expense too, but it's something you are going to need. So a water heater ranges anywhere from $40 to $100. If your horses are staying in stalls or in pens, you may need sawdust or shavings, and you can get this a few different ways. A lot of people get like a load of sawdust delivered to them, or you can buy bags of shavings. That's what I personally do. A bag of shavings is about $7 per bag. And these bags are usually enough to cover a 12 by 12 stall. You just have to figure out, based on the mess your horse makes, how often you're gonna need to put sawdust into that stall to really determine how much you're gonna spend on shavings. It's very good for your pastures to have the grass mowed down instead of letting it grow wild. That helps with weed control and things like that. So you're going to need something to mow the grass in your fields. A push mower is not gonna be able to do this, because when you have to mow a few acres, a push mower is not going to handle that. So you are either going to need a riding lawnmower, a zero turn, or a bush hog. In the end, having your own property balances out paying for a boarding stable every month. On to a boarding stable. So if you don't have land for your horse, you can keep your horse at a boarding stable. And the nice thing about boarding stables is, depending on the care package you're receiving, is someone else will take care of your horse's daily basic needs. Depending on the care package will depend on the price of the boarding stable. And there's a few different options you have. A self-care boarding option is going to be harder to find, just because a lot of people are a little reluctant to have self-care boarding facilities. And that's because they can't guarantee the level of care the horse is receiving. But if you are on a budget, a self-care boarding option may be the best choice for you. Overall, self-care boarding packages usually run around $150 to $300 a month. Another option is a partial care option. So in this option, Your horse's needs are being seen to by someone, like they're making sure your horse has water, they're maybe turning your horse out for you, feeding them. But there's going to be some part of the contract where you are responsible for some of the horse's cares. This option ranges anywhere from $250 to $400. The most expensive boarding option is going to be a full care option, and usually you have the option of having your horses in a pasture with a full care option, or they have a stall and turnout. So it just depends on those two options, will also change the price. All of your horse's needs are seen to. Usually hay and grain may be included in the cost. For this option, you can expect to spend $300 to $800 and more dollars a month on this. And if you're doing like a field boarding option, it would probably be on the cheaper end, like $300 to $500. If you're doing a stall with turnout, it's probably going to be more expensive. I would say $500 to $800. In some parts of America, horses can be on pasture all year round. And even if it gets cold, there's enough grass out there for them to eat. In those situations, you aren't going to need to spend a ton of money on hay. In some parts of the country, you will feed hay year-round, and it's going to be the main part of your horse's diet. Like, they're not going to have grass, they're just going to have hay. So you can expect to pay a lot more in those situations. Alfalfa bales will always be much more expensive than your normal, like coastal Bermuda or Timothy bale. You can also buy square bales, or you can buy round bales, and one square bale is going to be much cheaper than a round bale, but if you're looking at it in the long run, a round bale is going to be more cost effective. The cost of a square bale, once again, is going to fluctuate, but what I've noticed, especially traveling with our horses, is it does really depend on what part of the country you're in. When we were up in New York, where they have a lot of rain, they have plentiful pastures of hay, we were paying $5 for like premium hay. That said, when we got to Florida, you would pay about $11 for a bale of coastal Bermuda, which is just basic hay, it's nothing special. But in Florida, alfalfa bales were about $20 to $25 a bale. To really determine how much you're going to have to spend on hay a month, you need to figure out how much hay your horse needs. So horses eat anywhere from 1% to 2% of their body weight a day, and that's going to be about 10 to 20 pounds a day. For me, I have ponies, I have smaller horses, and so they don't eat as much as a normal horse. They eat about a bale a day between the two of them. If I'm going 30 days, I'm going to need about 30 bales. As I mentioned earlier, round bales are more cost effective and maybe a way to save money with hay. Round bales usually weigh about a ton, and there's a lot of hay in them. Once again, depending where you are, it's going to depend on how much the round bale is. In Virginia, where we have good grass and it's pretty plentiful if we're not in drought, a round bale usually costs about $50. In other parts of the country, you may spend $110 on a round bale. But a round bale could last one horse a month. It's something to consider, and if you own your own property, it's another thing to think about, because you're going to have to be able to get a round bale to your property and into your horse's field. So what I've seen a lot of people do is they just pick up a round bale when they need it, and they'll put it on the back of a pickup truck and then just go and dump it in the field. But a round bale isn't something that you can move yourself. You need equipment to move it. Your next biggest recurring expense will be feed and grain for your horse. And this is going to vary widely just depending on your horse's needs. If you're someone who you have a healthy horse that can live out on grass and carry their weight, and they don't need much more, you're not riding them hard every single day, you may not spend any money on grain. But if you have a hard keeper, your horse needs a little bit more to keep weight on them, your horse may be older or younger, so they need more energy, you will spend more on grain. Right now I spend about $200 a month on feed for my horses, but if we weren't traveling full time and they were out on pasture, I would be spending barely anything. So I can't really break those prices down for you, because a bag of grain or a bag of feed varies just depending on what you want for your horse. In a future video, I do plan on breaking down things to look for when you go to purchase a horse, and you can look at to see, is your horse an easy keeper, or is this horse going to be more of a hard keeper? And just those things that are very specific that you may not quite know without the experience. And I think that goes a long way in determining how much you're going to spend on a monthly basis for your horses. So when I go to look at horses, I always look for horses that have good feet, who can keep their weight, and a few other things where it just helps me figure out what kind of horse they are and what they need. Your next recurring cost will be for a farrier. So a farrier is someone who sees to your horse's feet. Your horse will at least need their hooves trimmed every 6 to 8 weeks. And if you want to put shoes on your horse, that is going to be more expensive. So for a trim, you can expect to pay anywhere from $30 to $50 a horse, and that's for all 4 feet. Or to get shoes on all 4 feet of your horse, you can expect to pay around $100 to $200 per visit. If you live in a climate where you get a lot of snow each winter, it's a smart idea to pull your horse's shoes going into winter. And the reason for that is a horse's shoe actually compacts snow into the hoof, and then your horse is walking up on like 6 inches of snow. And it's very uncomfortable and it looks uncomfortable. So that was one thing we always did, and that saved us money in the winter. If you are active in the winter where you're still competing or you're fox hunting or anything like that, you can get snow pads put into the shoe where it would be the horse's hoof, then the snow pad, then the shoe. And snow pads are just a one-time fee. Usually the horse will wear the same snow pad all winter. Snow pads are pretty cheap. I wouldn't expect to pay more than 40 bucks for snow pads, and that to me is even high. The next recurring cost can end up being the biggest cost if something unexpected happens. You are going to have to budget for vet visits for your horse. At the bare basics, your horse will see the vet probably once a year, and in this appointment they will get all their vaccines, they will get their teeth floated, they should get their sheath cleaned if you have a gelding, and if you don't know what that is, look it up, because I ain't gonna tell you here. And you're gonna need a Coggins test done. So if nothing else goes wrong for the rest of the year, you will at least have this vet appointment. In total, all your vaccines will cost about $100, and depending where you live will kind of depend on the vaccines you need. But you can expect $100 for your core vaccines and then your rabies and a tetanus. Teeth floating will cost a bit more. It usually ranges from like $200 to $300, and a big chunk of that goes towards sedation for your horse. Every year you're going to need a Coggins test, and if you plan on showing or trail riding or doing any type of horse activity, being at a boarding stable, you're gonna need a Coggins. And this usually costs about $50 to $60. Lastly, the sheath cleaning is a very important part to a male horse's health, and that costs about $25 per horse. So in total, this vet visit will come out to about $400. That said, I would highly recommend starting a savings account or some type of budget to where you are putting aside money each month for your horse in case they ever have a vet emergency. Even the smartest, most self-preserved horses will eventually probably need to see a vet at some time. I've had Tucker almost 9 years now. He's only needed to see the vet twice. Once is he had like a scratch in his eye. It wasn't even that expensive, like $145 for the vet to come out, look at his eye, give me the medicine. About a month ago, he colicked, and that vet bill ended up being $1,600. And that's because we had to go to the horse hospital, he had to stay overnight, and that's a whole other situation, but ended up being $1,600. So things vary widely there. Right now my horses are only on hay and feed. Just because we travel so much, they usually don't have access to grass where we go, and we're going out west, so there's no grass out there. So if you want to support us, be sure to check out our Etsy store. We have over 400 designs on our store. We have a bunch of funny shirts like this one. This is one of my favorites. Or we have some other kind of styled shirts. Be sure to go check that out. The link is in the description. I would say a good starting number for a yearly cost for owning a horse, and we're not talking about those one-time costs, we're talking about the recurring costs we just covered. I would say $4,000 is a good expectation to have for like your low end, $4,000 a year. Then from there, you can just keep going up depending on what type of lifestyle you want you or your horse to have, or the care your horse needs. Remember to check out our Etsy store, and I hope you found this video helpful. Please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.